Most people know me as the garbage king of the East Coast. I never minded that nickname. It's accurate after all. I built my waste management empire from scratch, starting with a single garbage truck I bought at an auction. Now I own the largest waste disposal company on the Eastern Seaboard. But that's not what this story is about. This is about how my wife tried to kill me and how being the garbage king saved my life. Let me start from the beginning. I met Sarah Bennett 10 years ago at a small diner in Boston. She was working as a paralegal then, living on coffee and dreams of becoming a lawyer. I was already successful, but not yet the king. Just a guy who saw an opportunity in trash and seized it. Sarah caught my eye immediately, not just because she was beautiful, but because of her determination. She was sitting at the counter, surrounded by law books, highlighters in multiple colors scattered around her coffee cup. I remember thinking she looked exhausted but focused, like a boxer between rounds. When I sat down next to her and ordered my usual black coffee, she barely glanced up. "Tort law?" I asked, nodding at her books. That got her attention. She looked at me suspiciously, probably wondering if I was another lawyer trying to hit on her. "Yes," she said, then added with a hint of defensiveness, "I'm studying for the LSAT." I smiled and pulled out my business card. "I'm not a lawyer," I said, "just a garbage man who's had his fair share of liability issues." She looked at the card, then at me, clearly surprised. "You're John Reynolds, the owner of Atlantic Waste Solutions?" I nodded. Pleased she'd heard of my company. "The very same, though I prefer environmental services entrepreneur to garbage manda." She laughed then, a genuine laugh that lit up her whole face. That was the moment I fell for Sarah Bennett. We started dating shortly after. Sarah was brilliant, ambitious, and surprisingly down to earth for someone with her aspirations. She didn't care that I worked in waste management. In fact, she found it fascinating. "You're cleaning up the world," she'd say. "That's more noble than pushing papers in a law firm." When she confessed her dream of going to law school, but couldn't afford it, I didn't hesitate. "Let me help," I offered. "Consider it an investment in our future." We were married 2 months later in a small ceremony. Sarah continued working as a paralegal while studying for the LSAT. I supported her completely, both financially and emotionally. Those early years were tough, but beautiful. We lived in a modest apartment, saving money for her education. I remember many late nights when I'd come home from work to find her asleep on the couch, law books spread around her. I'd carry her to bed, and she'd mumble legal terms in her sleep. When she got accepted to Harvard Law, we both cried. I worked harder than ever to pay for her education, expanding my business across the CIA. I was recruited right out of college for a very specific skill: lip reading. I had an uncanny ability to read lips with near-perfect accuracy. The CIA trained me further, preparing me for covert operations. I completed several successful missions before a whistleblower exposed my entire section. Not interested in a desk job, I left the agency and started my garbage business. I never told Sarah about my CIA background. It never seemed relevant, until now. The night of the party, Sarah made one final attempt to dissuade me. "I hate to see you have a miserable time," she said as she was getting ready. "Are you sure you want to go?" I watched her apply her makeup in the mirror, wondering when she had stopped seeing me as her partner. "Yes, dear," I said, adjusting my Armani tie. She couldn't complain about my appearance. I kept myself in good shape. I wasn't some stereotypical slob who happened to work with garbage. "You know," I said, unable to resist, "you deal with garbage too, just a different kind." She didn't appreciate that comment. We arrived at the party fashionably late, as Sarah insisted. The ballroom of the Four Seasons was already crowded with Boston's legal elite. We found a table near the dance floor where only one other couple was seated. I offered to get drinks for us, and that's when the fun began. My first confrontation of the night happened at the bar. A man in an expensive suit approached me while I was waiting for our drinks. "I don't believe we've met," he said, looking me up and down. Who are you here with? My wife, Sarah Bennett, I replied, deliberately using her maiden name. He frowned. Sarah? I didn't think she was married. Going on 10 years now, I said cheerfully. Though sometimes it feels like 20. He laughed, thinking I was joking. I wasn't. Throughout the evening, I heard whispers of the garbage king, followed by poorly concealed snickers. It didn't bother me. I'd expected this treatment from these legal snobs. To them, I was lower class, almost gutter-level scum. The irony wasn't lost on me. I watched Sarah as she worked the room, moving from group to group with practiced ease. She was in her element here, among the suits and silk dresses. When the dancing began, I decided to give it a shot. Would you like to dance? I asked her. She hesitated for a moment before accepting, probably worried about what her colleagues would think. I tried to take the lead during the slow dance, but Sarah kept her distance. Soon enough, other men started cutting in. She accepted their invitations eagerly, both for fast and slow dances. I retreated to our table and watched. That's when I saw him. He approached our table with the confidence of someone who owned the room. Distinguished looking, maybe mid-50s with silver hair and an expensive watch. Richard Thompson, senior partner. He didn't ask my permission. He didn't even acknowledge my existence. He simply held out his hand to Sarah. Her face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in years. She took his hand without even glancing in my direction. As they moved to the dance floor, I focused all my attention on them. Their body language was intimate, but not overtly so. Nothing I could capture in a damning photograph. But I didn't need photographs. I had my special skill. I positioned myself where I could see their faces clearly, especially their lips. What I read made my blood run cold. Did you get the room? Sarah asked. Room 322, Richard replied. Did you put it in? Yes, just a few minutes ago. In his drink. My hand tightened around my glass. I can't believe we're going to make love in the same room he'll be sleeping in, Sarah said, her lips curving into a smile. You love the danger, Richard replied. But what if he wakes up too soon? Don't worry about that. The dosage I gave you will keep him out all night. My stomach churned as I glanced at my half-empty glass. I'd already consumed some of whatever they had put in there. Quickly, I accidentally spilled the rest of my drink. Clumsy me. I announced to no one in particular. I headed toward the restrooms, but passed them and went straight for the exit. My mind was racing, trying to calculate how much of the drug I had ingested. I needed to get home, call the police, report what I'd discovered. But as I reached my car, the world started spinning. The last thing I remember was fumbling with my keys. I woke up to the steady beep of hospital monitors, bright lights, antiseptic smell, and the worst headache of my life. A nurse was checking my vitals when Sarah walked into the room. The sight of her made me bolt upright. Get her out, I shouted. Get that woman out of here. Sarah ran from the room, looking shocked and frightened. Good. She tried to kill me. I kept yelling. I want to talk to the police. The medical staff thought I was having some kind of psychological episode. I forced myself to calm down. Listen carefully. I told the nearest nurse. I've been drugged, run a toxicology screen for liquid Rohypnol and other knockout drugs. I think my wife and her lover tried to kill me. I might have been exaggerating slightly, but it worked. Within 15 minutes, a police officer was taking my statement. I told him I had overheard my wife and her lover discussing their plan to drug me. I didn't mention my lip-reading abilities yet. That was a card I wanted to hold on to. The officer seemed skeptical until the toxicology report came back. The amount of drugs in my system was staggering. If I had finished the entire drink, it would have been fatal. Suddenly, the term attempted murder entered the conversation. The casual police officer was replaced by a serious detective. A guard was posted outside my door. When I was discharged the next day, I went home to find Sarah wasn't there. Her belongings were still in place, but she was gone. I later learned she had been arrested at our house earlier that morning. She and Richard had come to try to convince me not to inform the law firm about their planned rendezvous. They thought that was their only crime. They were wrong. Both Sarah and Richard were charged with attempted murder. Neither of them spoke without their lawyers present. The district attorney wanted to try them separately. He hoped Sarah would turn on Richard if she saw she was going to be convicted. But that plan didn't work out. The cases were too intertwined. Sarah tried to contact me before the trial. She left messages claiming she was innocent of trying to kill me. Interestingly, she never apologized for the affair. I ignored her messages. I withdrew all our shared money and cut all financial ties. Her father had to pay for her lawyer until the courts forced me to return her half. The trial was a media circus. The toxicology report was the star evidence. A forensic chemist testified about the lethal nature of the dose I would have received. I was the star witness. The defense focused on my lip-reading abilities. How could I be so certain of what I saw? That's when my past came in handy. Several former CIA colleagues testified about my exceptional skill. I even gave a demonstration in court. The defense tried to suggest I had drugged myself to frame Sarah and Richard. Their theory: I wanted to ensure I got everything in the divorce. Plus, I could sue the law firm for a hefty settlement. I wish I had been that clever. The judge wasn't impressed when I bluntly stated how stupid I found that theory. Neither Sarah nor Richard testified in their defense. They brought in experts to argue that the drug wouldn't have been lethal. They had a sign language expert testify about the general inaccuracies of lip reading. I particularly enjoyed when my lawyer asked if he had ever tested my specific abilities. He hadn't. The defense's argument was simple. No one saw Richard give Sarah any drugs. No one saw Sarah put anything in my drink. And there was no evidence I hadn't drugged myself. Then came the turning point. An elderly woman in the gallery kept trying to get the district attorney's attention. Her persistence caused such a disruption that the DA sent an assistant to investigate. The assistant returned quickly, whispering urgently to the DA. "Your Honor, we need a recess," the DA announced. When the judge granted a 15-minute break, I glanced at Sarah. The color had drained from her face as she stared at the elderly woman. She immediately began a heated discussion with her lawyer. After the recess, the DA requested permission for a rebuttal witness. Sarah's lawyer stood up before the judge could respond. "Your Honor, we request another recess," he said, his voice tense. "My client wishes to change her plea." Richard's lawyer exploded. The word insane was thrown around several times. But Sarah had made up her mind. She agreed to plead guilty and accept a 3 to 5 year sentence. In exchange, she would testify against Richard. The DA accepted the deal. Later, we learned what the elderly woman had told him. She had been sitting at our table during the party. When questioned by the police, she had been asked specifically about knockout powder. Since she hadn't seen Sarah add any knockout powder, she had answered no. But she had seen Sarah put something in my drink. Sarah had told her it was hangover prevention medicine. "He always drinks too much at these events," Sarah had said. The woman had believed her. It took several more months for everything to be finalized. Sarah's testimony became the centerpiece of Richard's new trial. She detailed how their affair began, how Richard had pursued her relentlessly. She swore she had only intended to deceive me. She claimed Richard had chosen the drug in its dosage. Richard's defense painted a different picture. They argued that Sarah had manipulated everything from the start. According to them, she planned to frame Richard and eliminate me. She would inherit my fortune and remove a lover whose junior partnership she coveted. My car accident had disrupted her perfect plan. Richard wept on the stand, devastated that he might have harmed someone. The jury believed Sarah's version over Richard's. He was sentenced to 10 to 15 years. I was allowed to speak at his sentencing hearing. "I shouldn't be here today," I told the court, my voice steady. "I should be buried in Pine Grove Cemetery. My wife's lover should be standing beside my grave, celebrating their successful disposal of the garbage man. She should have inherited my fortune. She should be spending my money with her accomplice. Don't be fooled. Neither of them regrets that I nearly died. They regret that I survived and they got caught. It was my ability to read lips that saved my life. I had already consumed about a quarter of the drug drink when I discovered the truth. That amount was enough to knock me out and send my car crashing. If I had hit the tree instead of the bushes, I would be dead. Tests confirmed that if I had finished the drink, I wouldn't have survived. While my wife and her lover planned to indulge themselves, I would have been dying in that hotel room. They claimed they only intended to drug and deceive me. They argue she mistakenly administered a potentially lethal dose. Even if that were true, do they deserve just a slap on the wrist? I don't think so. But perhaps my opinion doesn't matter. After all, I was supposed to be dead. As they led Sarah away after Richard's sentencing, she shouted an apology. Read my lips. I called back. I don't care. The divorce proceedings were straightforward, given Sarah's incarceration. She didn't contest anything. I believe she felt genuine shame about the danger she had put me in. Not about the affair, but about almost killing me. I achieved exactly what their defense attorney had accused me of planning. I got everything in the divorce. The law firm settlement was substantial. They were desperate to avoid publicity. Combined with my existing business, I was now truly the king of my domain. You could say I was filthy rich in more ways than one. The media coverage was intense. Garbage King Survives Murder Plot made headlines across the country. I gave exactly one interview to a national magazine. They asked if I was bitter about what happened. I told them the truth. In my business, you learn that everything can be recycled. Even betrayal can be transformed into something valuable. The trick is knowing how to sort the trash from the treasures. The reporter loved that quote. It became the title of the article. What amazed me most was the aftermath. The number of women who suddenly wanted to be the new garbage queen was staggering. My secretary had to screen countless calls and emails. Gold diggers, looking for their own piece of the garbage empire. I found it ironic. The same kind of women who would have looked down on me before were now desperate for my attention. But I had learned my lesson. Success doesn't change who you are. It just makes it harder to see people's true nature. These days, I focus on what I do best. My company has expanded to cover the entire East Coast. We're moving into renewable energy and recycling technology. The Garbage King is becoming more of an environmental monarch. Sometimes, late at night, I think about Sarah in her prison cell. I wonder if she regrets choosing status over substance. If she misses the simple life we had before she became a lawyer. But then I remember her face when she introduced me to her colleagues. The shame in her eyes when they called me the Garbage King. And I realized something important. Some types of trash can't be recycled. Some things need to be disposed of permanently. That's what I did with Sarah and our marriage. I threw them away. And I've never been happier. They say one man's trash is another man's treasure. Well, this Garbage King finally found his true worth. And it had nothing to do with how others saw me. It had everything to do with how I saw myself. That's the real treasure I discovered in this whole mess. That, and a reminder that my old CIA skills never go to waste. You never know when being able to read lips might save your life. These days, when people call me the Garbage King, I smile. Because I know something they don't. Sometimes, the real garbage isn't what's in the dumpster. It's wearing designer suits and sitting in corner offices. And sometimes, the guy who hauls away your trash is the one who ends up taking out the real garbage. The humankind